about to hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is Joe Cristiano, and welcome to Liberty Talk Radio, also known as Cristiano's Conservatory, correcting convoluted conversation. We're broadcasting from our new studio, by the way, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at the Cityplex Towers, here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we're broadcasting to around the world. This broadcast is being brought to you live on Friday morning. It's about 8:02 a.m. Central Time. Friday morning, November 28th, 2014. All right, and during our live broadcast, we would like for you to call 646-652-4620 or toll free 888-773-4496. Send us your email anytime to comments@libertytalkradio.com. Before we get started, I would also like to remind our listeners to subscribe to our reminder service by visiting our website and clicking on the subscribe icon. My Twitter address, by the way, is @LibertyJoe. Let me hear from you. Folks, there's been a lot of controversy within my own studio and group of friends regarding today's broadcast. They didn't particularly care for the fact that I was regurgitating the incident with Michael Brown. And quite frankly, I sympathize with them. I agree with them 100%. I think we have discussed the Michael Brown incident ad nauseum, right? And also, there is also a risk when you do so, is that when you talk about a racial issue of alienating people or saying something that could possibly be misinterpreted. I hope that does not occur this morning. The reason why I'm bringing up this subject again is because I don't want to talk about Michael Brown, but I want to use that as a basis for this conversation that we're going to have. Now, I really would like to hear from you. 646-652-4620 or 888-773-4496. By the way, this is our maiden voyage here, our maiden broadcast on Liberty Talk Radio. I'm kind of excited, kind of nervous, believe it or not. Usually I'm not. I've been doing this for many years, but it's a new environment, and I just can't seem to get used to it, not yet, and maybe in time it will. Our broadcast will probably be shorter than normal in many cases. Instead of going for an hour to an hour and a half as we have been going, I think we'll have more frequent broadcasts, but shorter intervals, anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes. This broadcast will be about 30 minutes today. All right? Now, let me start by saying this. Michael Brown is really not the issue. He is not the problem. You see, the problem is with our social conduct, our social paradigm, if you will. You see, we have become a nation of enablers. Winston Churchill, when he visited the United States, and we are talking decades ago, remarked that he was really impressed with the American parents because the American parents were so obedient to their children. Now, this is decades ago. This is a time when, even when I grew up, quite frankly, things were pretty strict. Now, I want to give you some background. Many of you know who I am and where I come from. I'm an East Side boy, New York City, East Harlem, right? Lived on the streets. Right? I was very unusual in my family in that I was colorblind, if you will. I was nationality blind. People in my family, of course, it was an Italian ghetto, primarily Italian, but they were all different nationalities that lived in our neighborhood. but dominated by the Italians on the east side, at that time at least. And even my sister, she was real Italian. Me, didn't make any difference. And most nationalities are like that. What they do is they take their life, their world, and they make it more perfect than it is, and all the worlds around them are less perfect. And as a result, you say, well, we are somehow superior or better than everyone else. And quite frankly, that was the Italian mentality. Well, I have no idea why, but I never bought into that. In fact, and I've said this before, and I'm repeating myself, obviously, is that I had a singing group. I sang doo-wop back in the 50s. And I believe I had the very first fully integrated, racially integrated singing group in Harlem. We had a black lead, and we had a Puerto Rican second tenor. Well, when my father found out about that, he went nuts, threw me out of the house. I mean, he couldn't take it. But I want you to know where I'm coming from. Is that I never really understood this racial thing, and the superiority complex that everyone has depending on what race they're in. But I want to get away from race. What bothers me about the conversation that we have had regarding Michael Brown is not only are we focusing on the wrong problem, but we're using the wrong language. The language that we are using is black and white. We have black people and we have white people. Well, that's all wrong. That incites divisiveness. It defines divisiveness. Well, you're black, you're white. Well, obviously, white is better than black. I mean, it's a black time and black rock, that type of thing. Well, you don't want to do that, and I want to change the dialogue. We have groups here that are in the minority just by virtue of their numbers. Now, there's no negative connotation to that. There are Vietnamese populations that are in the minority, very incredibly hardworking people, strong work ethic, very, very close families, very low crime, right? High employment. Well, they are minorities. I don't want to call them something else. They are human beings just like everyone else. And in many ways, folks, are much superior. Not because they are Vietnamese or they are Laotian or whatever, but because of the culture of their nationality. Now, it's instead of calling Michael Brown a black man, why don't we just say he belongs to a group that's the minority in the United States? But you see, once we do that, we run into real problems in a way, because we redefine the entire problem that we experienced in Ferguson. You see, the African American community, and I want to clarify another thing. People of color are not particularly black people. When we say black people, we infer or we think of people from Africa, right? Well, you see, race is not determined by the color of your skin. It's determined by bone structure. I know people say don't say that because it could be disrespectful, misinterpreted, and I agree with them. But I want you, for example, in India, some of the people in India are very, very dark. But they are considered Caucasians because their bone structure is the same as a Caucasian race. Some African Americans are extremely light, but their bone structure is that of the Negro race. Now, I'm not being disrespectful. This is fact. I think we should take all of this thing like he said this word and he said that word, get it out of our vocabulary altogether. Now, I don't consider myself white. Now, I haven't been in the sun now for the past couple of months because it's been cool, and I'm still relatively brown. I'm a light brown. And yet I'm considered part of the white race. When I fill out applications, I'm appalled at when they say, "Are you white?" I said, "Well, not really. I'm kind of a light brown. In the summertime, I'm pretty dark brown. So all this does is that when we call people white or black, we divide people. But we're all one. See, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the blacks here, the blacks that, the whites this, the white that. It's all wrong. And let me tell you how fouled up we are. If you take the minority in the world, in the United States, the minorities, the African American or the black people, if you will, or the people of color. Let me put the people of color. I'm a person of color as well, and we all are. Are in the minority. The ones that we refer to as the black population or the Negro population, I think that's an inappropriate word today for some reason. I can't figure that out. But they represent something like less than 20% of the population. But what I find interesting is that in Ferguson, 74.6% of the population, and we're talking tens of thousands of people, are the minority. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. The minority in Ferguson is the majority. Now, how does that change the dialogue? Well, if the minority is the majority, then we don't have a minority situation. Then you say, well, no, Joe, it's just the color of their skin. You say, well, wait a minute. Wait. I'm lost now. Because if you are the majority, 75%, 3/4 of the people are the minority. The majority outside of Ferguson is the vast minority. It's the exact reverse of what we have in the United States, almost to the percentage point. So you would think that in, quote, white America, most of the people in office and whatever are white, and that's true, most are. Now, but you would also think, or be led to believe, that most of the people in Ferguson are in fact, since the minority is the majority, most of the people would be represented by the majority there, which would be the minority outside of Ferguson. No one's talking about that. There are 6 or 7, I don't remember, 6 or 7 councilmen in Ferguson. Only one is a minority, or considered, nationwide a minority. Now, let's assume there's just six councilmen. Why would not at least 4, minimum 4, maybe 5, be minority? Be of the minority, the national minority. Let's call it the national minority. Now that would make sense. But no one has explained, no one has dialogued at all as to why we have the minority, the majority in Ferguson, still acting as the minority. Now, if in fact the people were truly represented, now I'm sure that the people who vote, if everyone voted for, let's say, a minority candidate, and the guy says, nah, we can't have him in, throw him out. I'm sure they don't do that. Now, the police department has practically no minority policemen, national minority policemen. I call them NMs, national minorities, okay? Why? No one is addressing that. Now, you would think that 3/4 of the police force would be of the national minority. But they're not. there's practically no national minority people in the police force. Why? When times are so difficult, times are so incredibly difficult, jobs are so being a police officer pays pretty well, relatively speaking. Now, is it that they are not qualified for other reasons? For example, they don't have an education that qualifies them? Well, if you look at Ferguson, I went to the website, there are colleges in and nearby Ferguson. There are community colleges. There are trade schools. They're only 10 miles from St. Louis, Missouri. There's adequate educational facilities. Why haven't they taken advantage of them? So we see people in the streets destroying everything. And why? Well, they're discriminated against. Well, by whom? They're the majority. They're not minority. How could the majority be discriminated against? That's not possible. Now, if I vote for a dictator, if I vote for someone who I know is going to hate, I'm of Italian descent, and I don't care, quite frankly, but, I know some people in my family are really big about that stuff. But if I voted for somebody who hated Italians, they said Italians, we're going to give them a hard time, not allow them to have any jobs, would I vote for him? No, I would run to the polls and make sure that this person did not. Now, did not get into office. And let's assume for a second that 75% of the people in my district were Italian. We would all run to the polls and say, no, don't put this guy in. Well, why hasn't that happened in Ferguson? Did Ferguson put white racists in office? Did they vote for white racism? It doesn't make any sense. Now, there are a couple of problems, and these problems center around enabling the individual. Now, I'm going to tell you something. When I grew up in Harlem, there was something called respect. Respect was a big thing with Italians. And they had it right. If we were at a coffee shop, and I was the youngest guy there, and let's say an elder walked in, like this guy Paulie was an elder in Harlem, had a cane, and I don't know how old he is, 85, 90 years old, come in. If there were no seats, and the youngest person did not stand up and say, Paulie, please have my seat, somebody else, an adult, would get up, go up to that young kid, take him, I'm telling you, take him by the ear, lift him up, and go, where's your reason? Smack him one. Usually get smacked in their face. The kid guy didn't have to know you, Paulie's standing there. What's the matter? What are you standing there for? Where's your respect? Where's your respect? But today it's like, the older people. And by the way, if we go back to, in history, thousands of years, you'll find that every tribe, the elders were the ones respected the most. They were respected because they worked for the tribe, for their community. And now that they're older and they can't hunt anymore and whatever, they had the knowledge and the wisdom, and they were held in high regard. The young kids, zero, because they contributed nothing. They just took. I mean, they had to feed them. They couldn't hunt. They were too small. But in our culture, young 5-year-old kids are respected more than the elders, who've been through a tremendous amount of their life and have supported families and created the structure of the family and kept things together. You know why? Because the kids know how to download an app. And, Grandpa, he doesn't know how to do that. He's stupid. hold on a second. Don't go away because I want to finish this up. We only have about another 10 minutes. We have a real quick break. Do not go away.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com. Do you find yourself asking, what did you say? Aaron Cristiano of Ranch Acres Audiology has over 25 years of experience helping patients just like you.
Hearing requires conservation. We need to be aware and we need to be responsible for our own hearing health.
Understand more with a little help from Ranch Acres Audiology. Call 918-749-7711. That's 918-749-7711 to learn more.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
One person I would like to acknowledge, we have people who sponsor this program, and they do so because they want the message to go out. They want to participate. Now, we don't have advertisers, we have sponsors. One is Constance Squires, and she's a real sweetheart. She's an attorney, and I call her Connie Squires, and she can be reached at 918-254-9283, or you can go to www.isthy.will.done. And she talks about how people, I guess her major thing is having people make certain that they have wills and trust and whatever, so in case something should happen, everything doesn't hit the fan. So go to isthyWillDone.com and call Constance or Connie Squires, and her number is 918-254-9283. Make your life easier. She'll help you out. She's really wonderful. Okay. And also, Liberty Talk Radio is sponsored by Ranch Acres Audiology. That's my wife's audiology practice. Let me be honest with you. and they can be reached at 918-749-7711. My wife is a real sweetheart. She can really help you out. She's wonderful. Okay. So support those people who support this program. All right. Now, Michael Brown is a victim of our society. Now, our society shows that, the children are the ones that are respected, the elders are not. And then, as a result, we enable children. And I have friends whose sons don't work. They hang around the house, and then when the father comes home from work, he goes, "Hey, Dad, I need $20. And he gives it to him. And he goes out and he buys drugs, or whatever he does, gets drunk with his friends. That's enabling. Now, I tell people something that most people don't understand, and that is the only time I give to my kids, they're not kids anymore, in their 40s, is when they don't need it. Because if I give it to them when they need it, now except for when they were very young, 5 years old or 4 years old, if I give to them now when they need it, that means they did not plan. And if I give to them what they need now when they knew they needed it, I'm enabling them. We are a country of enablers, and Michael Brown is a product of that enablement. Where is the outrage? What happened to them? If I had to put someone in jail for what happened to Michael Brown, I would say the parents. Where were the parents? Instead of the parents condemning what her son has done, what their son has done, they're making excuses. They are enabling. The worst thing you can do is enable people. Now, people say, well, he's hanging around. What is he hanging around for? He should be working. They say, well, jobs are hard to find. Well, that's garbage. We're not talking about a job. We're talking about work. You can always create work. You can cut tile. You can paint houses. You can mow lawns. There's a million things you can do. Literally a million things you can do. You know, if you had, you know, the conscience to do that, if you have the incentive to do that, if you have the drive to do that. Now, if you have the drive to take it easy because you've been enabled and, man, life is easy, and if it's not easy, I'll just take from somebody else. And that's exactly what he did at the convenience store. So Michael Brown is a product of our society. And society is to blame. Now, is it everyone's society? No. You go to a society of other minorities and you find the behavior very different. You know, if someone told me that they lived in a community, let's say a person that's Caucasian, and they said they lived in a community that I knew was a majority were from China, and I'm making this up, obviously, and they would just say, I live in this neighborhood, you know, and mostly Chinese people there. What the first thing I would think of, oh, geez, he must live among smart people. Guys who are computer programmers, you know, entrepreneurs, hardworking, very good family. This is the image that I could be wrong, but that's the image that I have. Now, if someone says, well, I live in that minority neighborhood, the black neighborhood, you know, you'd say, what do you live there for? So they create their society. We all create our society. Now, I know there are many, many people, minorities, that are trying to break out of it. But these minorities have to do something about their own community first to make sure that they get the communities on the right track and start telling them, hey, you're wrong. What Michael Brown did was wrong. And he did what he did because we don't have the structure from which, in our own community, from which our kids could grow up and have a sense of responsibility. We don't do that, folks. What do they expect to accomplish when they burned down the buildings and broke all the windows at the convenience store? Beautiful Quick Trip, beautiful convenience store. Michael Brown is simply a victim of his own society. Now, he was wrong in what he did, and there's no doubt in my mind that what he did. I mean, there's no doubt. And the education system is irrelevant because half the billionaires in this world never went to college and many never went to high school. It's a work ethic. All right, let's cut it out. No more talking about Michael Brown. No more talking about Ferguson. But let's get it straight. The minority is the majority, and they still didn't do anything. They should really think about that. All right. With that, I want to thank you very much for listening in on the main broadcast of Liberty Talk Radio here at the Cityplex Towers in southern part of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Thank you very much for listening in. And let's see, I think I have some bumper music here. Let's see if there it goes. All righty. All right. This is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. Folks, you can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. We went off again. We got to fix that. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. With that, until next time, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.